Welcome to a Christian Business Podcast. I'm your host. Unfortunately, for the next few episodes, Justin, co-host, is not going to be able to be with us. He's got, as I'm sure many of you can understand, a ridiculous amount of stuff going on in his business, and it just you all know he loves to be a dad, and so if he's going to cut something, it's probably going to be this. So I'll be flying solo for a little while, but we have today with us Joel from Rescued 2.0 out of Muskegon, Michigan. And we're going to kind of hear Joel's story and, what God's doing in his life and what he's doing in his business. And maybe we'll pick apart and gain a few little nuggets of wisdom from him. A kind of a devotion here. We were talking Sunday about the Apostle Peter and kind of the transformation that happened in his life. And we talked a lot about the image Peter had of who God was and who Jesus was going to be, who the Messiah was going to be, what he was going to look like, what he was going to do when he got here. And, we looked at that one little snippet of Peter pulled out his sword in the garden. And so it's like, wait a minute, it said the last 3 years, what part of the last 3 years would suggest to you that we're going to pull out swords? This whole servant. But if you look back at the Old Testament prophecies, it talks about a conquering king and a ruler and the scepter would never depart from his hand. And so I can understand where that would be. And so where we went with that is we all have an idea of what Jesus transforming our lives should look like in our head. And that's not necessarily the physical, the concrete, the tangible is not always what he's doing. Sometimes it's a work in our heart. And we talked about the fact that Peter's transformation in his heart from this kind of loud and speak first and figure it out later, move to a more reflective, contemplative, wise, shepherding leader of the church. And so what Peter thought God was working on was totally different. And so the question that I kind of posed was, what are you waiting for God to do that not long from now you'll realize your desire and your need was actually spiritual and not natural? Peter realized after the fact that the conquering that Jesus did at that time was the conquering of sin and death, not necessarily the conquering of Rome. And he thought it was Rome. And looking back on it, he could go, oh, how much better is it that I am rescued from bondage to sin and death than bondage to Caesar? And so what in our lives right now are we waiting for God to do something in the physical and tangible world where he's actually working on our hearts? And that may be illustration of what's going on in our hearts from a spiritual perspective. So that was just some thoughts we had of just something to think about as we get digging in here. I don't know if that has anything to do with Joel's story or not, but that's a little devotion we try and get going with. So Joel, get us started. Joel BC, before Christ, what did that look like and what did the transformation look like and kind of timeline and where you grew up and all that. Give me your testimony.
Sure. I actually started growing up in Zeeland, Michigan, and grew up in a Reformed church, also known as the Frozen Chosen back in the day, right? No raising of the hands.
Shots fired.
Nah, it's good, and that's just like, no cradling the baby, no raising the roof, but it was, sitting in pews. But I grew up that way for a long time, and it didn't really stick, but the information was still there. And later on, in my early 20s, when I met my wife, and she was actually going to church, it kind of pulled me back into actually wanting to go back to church. So that was pretty important.
Mm-hmm.
But growing up, I was a thief most of my life.
Got you. Okay.
So
Sticky fingers.
Yeah. I made a lot of mistakes growing up to the point where I joined the military. And right after I joined the military, the National Guard, I ended up coming back home from basic and AIT and getting caught right back into the same stupidity of the reason why I left.
Got you.
And then got caught getting a felony and a misdemeanor and ended up getting double probation in 2 counties.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. But while you're part of the Guard.
While I'm part of the Guard.
How does that work?
All right, here we go. So if it wasn't for a few people to stand up for me, that was like, hey man, this kid's young and he's kind of an idiot, but we see a little glimmer of hope in him.
Right.
Literally, I probably would have been kicked right out of the military. So for 2 years, I couldn't even carry a rifle while I was on. Yes. So if you know being in the military and you can't carry a weapon, that's not good. Not good at all. I had a stick and a buttstock number. So I was basically a laughing stock for almost 2 years.
I see what you said. Stock. I see what you did
Yeah.
there. Stock.
Yep.
Stock. A laughing stock.
No, a laughing stock, buttstock. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it took a long time. So I felt like I had a lot to prove to like not only myself, but everybody around me. And that was just like the beginning of my life. And so I was way behind the game compared to everybody else. So then paid back all the restitution, got off probation a little bit early on both ends, and then ended up being able to get deployed to Iraq in 2006. So basically the Army cleared me.
Interesting way that you phrase that, being able to be deployed.
Yes.
Instead of having to be deployed. So can you maybe expand on that a little bit?
Yes. So they asked us if I didn't have to deploy at that time, but they were asking for volunteers. And so I put my name in the hat. I was trying to do anything and everything. And at that time, completing my felony and misdemeanor, like time served per se, I still had a felony and a misdemeanor on my record. The military released me to be able to basically hold a rifle. I'm a true soldier.
Able to, so before it was like, well, you're in here and we're going to limit you because you did some stupid stuff.
Yes.
And so when you say be able to, it was you weren't able to, you weren't allowed to. It wasn't like, so whether you wanted to or not, you weren't able.
Yes. So we had JAG, which is that's a military term for basically civilians would call it like a lawyer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they were like, well, there's nothing that says you can't hold a rifle in another country. So that was like their loophole, and they're like, all right, we can get you deployed. So I ended up deploying to Iraq in 2006 to 2007. So
kind of some of that dignity situation. So you were then able to deploy, and
yes.
Forgive us, we had to edit in there, so if this sounds choppy. But you were able to deploy, and so had you met Jesus yet?
I'm like attending like church, but I'm not like truly.
You weren't quite, like it wasn't all there.
I grew up, so it felt right.
It felt right. It was habit. It was, this is what we do. You were a part of the Christian religion.
Yes. So we were hanging out with chaplains, right? Those are like the equivalent of like a priest or a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
So did a lot of stuff overseas, and you always come to a little bit close to Jesus while you're at a situation where, you may not come home.
Jailhouse religion.
Yep.
Military religion. Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So deployed, came back. I went through kind of like this stage. There was some close calls over there, but I walked home safe and sound. We only lost one guy out of like 300 that we brought over there. He ended up getting blown up by an IED, but he ran the gun truck. So he actually found, if I'm not mistaken, 23 IEDs. So he protected a lot of people, but the 24th one got him, basically.
Okay.
So he did a good job.
And you were you like some kind of infantry? What were you?
So we were het drivers. So we moved all the tanks all over Iraq. So we had the surge in 2007 at the beginning. So we moved all the tanks from all over Iraq, like up in Mosul, and we brought them all down to Baghdad. So we were in Baghdad like every other day, every couple days. So you were
driving trucks and
which was like the number 2 occupation to get like killed. Because infantry was number 1, right. And then if you can stop the supply train, then you win. So
right, and so you were a heavy target.
Yeah,
right. The rebuilding, right? Because my brother was part of an engineering unit, and he said they ran into stuff like that. They'd have to go, bring in the explosives guys, and detonate a dead animal on the side of the road or something. But that was kind of the after cleanup, so it sounded like it was quite a bit less than these guys are moving 16 weapons on these 4 trucks.
Yeah,
this is probably a pretty high value target for the enemy. Got you. So saw some combat.
Yep.
Kind of wakes you up a little bit. but still hadn't quite, like, was it over there that you did really connected with Jesus, or was it kind of like,
Nope.
hey, God, help me, I'll talk to you when I get back kind of thing?
I thought I had a good relationship, but I wasn't there yet.
Got you. Okay.
I wasn't fully awake, I should say.
Hmm.
It wasn't until I got back that literally I call it like some people had like PTSD,
Mm-hmm.
but I had like invincibility. Like I bought a crotch rocket and I went fast. And I went really
Okay.
fast all the time. I was going like 150
Mhm.
everywhere just because I could do that, right? That was my adrenaline rush. That was that would waken me up. It would make me feel alive.
Mm-hmm.
And now about that time is when a couple years, so I came back in 07. I meet my wife, Cassie, at 2009. So
Okay.
a couple years later, and that's where she starts going to church, and I'm like, well, I can do the church thing. I used to do that. That's cool.
Right.
So we start going to this huge church in Allendale. Good, bad. It's just really big. And so we blend in, but there's no connection really, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we had a guy live with us months down the road, a guy named Steve Cole III. He ended up dying in a motorcycle accident. But there was a pastor there that ended up doing like this testimony for him. Never met him, but from just meeting all the friends, like he made us laugh, he made us cry.
Mm-hmm.
Great guy. And then afterwards, I'm like, what church do you preach at? I was like, I think I could listen to you for a long time. Like, and he's like, Jericho Road. And I'm like, Jehovah's Witness? I didn't hear him right. And he's like, no, Jericho Road. And that was out in like Nunica. And it's just like 30, 40 people as a small church. And I'm like, all right, let's go there. So we went there and we basically got hooked.
Mm-hmm.
And so about that time, about a year or two later is when I actually gave my life to Christ and changed my life. So
Rock on. Rock on. What do you think was the biggest change once you kind of solidified that relationship with Jesus? Did you see a lot of external change, or did you see more internal change, kind of as part of that?
Internal.
A lot more internal. What kinds of things?
I felt guilty.
Oh man, isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of that feeling, and it's kind of like, I don't know how to really explain it, but basically, like when you get the Holy Spirit, you like have conviction.
Yeah,
more than
that's
what you
one of the
normally
things
would.
he does. He
Yeah,
will,
absolutely.
The Spirit will come and convict. He convicts. And I talk. That's kind of similar to my story. Is like I was, when I met Jesus, I became sickened over my sin.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've felt bad when I sinned before, but that was more about the consequences.
Yeah.
But after I met Jesus, it was like,
Yes.
So yeah, so you felt that. That was kind of
Absolutely.
your okay. Now, back up a little bit. You had been married for a few years by this time, right?
No.
Not quite. Okay. All right. Good. So you met Jesus before you got married, but you were seeing each other.
Yes. Actually, my wife, we did all the wrong things, right?
Okay, got you.
And so we're trying to, like, she moved in about, I think 6 months after we started dating, and that was, all the wrong things. But
Sure.
in love at the time that we thought, if we could cohabitate together, we would be stronger together. No.
All right.
Lots and lots of issues, more on my end, just still out there trying to conquer the world and still being a complete idiot, but now having conviction.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, a lot of changes, but we still took in a lot of people before we got married. Like we took in Steve for a few months, kind of help him rehabilitate.
Oh, like giving guys a leg up.
Yeah. So just a safe place. It's my wife and I have always done that for a lot of people. And then we had her friend Randy move in with her daughter at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she was pregnant or was going to be pregnant. She moved in a couple times with us throughout, just to give her a nice, safe space,
Did you have kids at that time?
We didn't at that time. Our first didn't come along to 2013, so
Okay.
Our daughter.
So you met Jesus roundabouts 2011, 12?
I would say 10 or 11. I don't know the
10 or
exact
11.
year.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there. Okay. So that's when things started to change, and then you got married sometime after that?
Yep. I was getting ready to get deployed in 2012 again to, this time was Kuwait, which I was like, oh, that's a really safe, it's just hot, but it's safe. And I was like, that's actually a great deployment for a year. And I was like, you don't really have to worry. I was going to go over there being basically a desk jockey. And we get all prepared, and we ended up moving our wedding up. So we ended up getting married 11/11/11, which is awesome for me as a dude because I know my wedding date.
Exactly.
I know my anniversary. It's also Veterans Day, which
so
is
like, there you go.
a double. So sometimes you even get a free meal, which is great.
Where do you want to go for our anniversary? You know, the Legion down there is having steak dinner tonight.
That's right. I was like, I grew up Dutch and French, so like anything that you can save money, I'm like, oh.
You save money on good food.
That's right.
It's
That's
Dutch
right.
and French right there.
That's right.
Was it kind of a like, okay, we love Jesus. We need to make this right. I'm about to be deployed. If something happens right now, you get nothing. Let's finish this thing.
Yeah. So we ended up going through marriage counseling, and basically like, he was like, if you need to like sleep in separate rooms at least. If you're not going to move out, which you probably should, then at least sleep in separate rooms. And I'm pretty sure we did that for a little bit.
We made it partway through that.
We made it most of the way through it.
I mean, at least 2 nights we were separate.
Yeah, I know.
It
sounds really bad, but I was like,
But a lot of us, a lot of people. I mean, we've been there. We get it. It's
absolutely.
Like, praise God that the pastor did recommend that and that he did say that. Because it's so easy to be like, well, you're getting married. Hey, what's one more sin? That kind of thing. So praise God that he was, encouraging you guys to do that. But at that time, there were obviously you both had convictions, but there's convictions and there's flesh and
yes, absolutely.
So,
yeah,
got you. What point did kids enter the picture? Did she get pregnant before you deployed, or was it after you got back?
Never deployed.
Oh, you never deployed?
No, it ended up getting canceled. So I ended up quitting my job. Well, I actually took a voluntary layoff, and then I think it was about 2 months later, they called me up. I was like, "Yeah, we're not deploying." I'm like, "Oh no!" Like, I took a voluntary layoff to like save somebody else's job,
right? Because
I was going to disappear,
right.
And I was like, "Oh, maybe the market will change."
Right.
In 2012, and it didn't. And then I ended up creating my first business then, after we got married. So
you said my first business, so that leads me to believe that the Rescued 2.0 was not your first business.
It was not my first business. No, I've had multiple ones.
So what was your first business?
So very similar name, Rescued Parts. It was my first one, and we did TV parts. So we would buy TVs from all the big suppliers and sellers. I mean, like even Circuit City back in the day. Mm-hmm. We would take them, anything that had damage in them, like the cracked screens, we would take them, part them out, and recycle most of the parts out of it. We couldn't do the screens, but we did the plastic. We were the only ones making money on the plastic at the time too.
Really?
Yes. We were doing this in Muskegon, and I had a business partner, and we would buy, I mean, it was lucrative. We would buy a TV between $25 to $50, and I would pull $250 on average to $750 out of it.
Out of it. Really?
Really, yes.
What were people buying?
All the parts. It was much cheaper back then to repair a TV than actually just go out and buy a new one like now. So
in 2012?
2012, yes. Like Vizio TVs had nothing but major issues, so we would sell every board we would get in, every board. And then you had like...
Oh, that's right when like LCD was starting to take off.
Yes.
But it was still new enough that it was expensive.
Yep.
And yeah, because I'm like, now, you pay $200 for a TV, and if it breaks, it costs you $500 to fix it. Go buy another TV.
That's exactly right.
So that market obviously dropped.
Yeah, it dropped. When we got in, it was super lucrative, and then everybody else kind of followed suit. And we started watching the trend from 13 to 14, where literally it just started plummeting.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to push our business in another direction. I wanted to get into appliances or something else that would make it more stable with parts long term.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I recently just bought a TV part, and I had it shipped to my house, and I think I paid $22.
And you were selling that similar part for $200.
Yeah, way back in the day. And I'm just like, there's no money.
Mm-hmm.
There's I mean, with the fees and, shipping costs, I was like, there's no money to be made anymore. So.
Got you. So that you and that business partner kind of parted ways, or did you guys decide, hey, we need to get out of this thing, the writing on the wall,
I wish I could I would still have that business to this day. Sure. Every time I'd leave for the military, if I had to leave for training and stuff like that, things just go wonky, money would be missing, or he just wouldn't show up to work. He got into like drug, because we got successful very quickly. We were very profitable very quickly. And it literally, I think it just went to his head. So he's like, I'm picking him up from weird houses, he's getting into drugs, drinking alcohol, ladies, and I don't ever know where he's at. And it just, so we start in 2012 and we have our daughter in 2013. I mean, I'm raising my daughter at work. She's literally, my wife's there too, helping out the business whenever, she wasn't working at her other job. It was, it was a nightmare trying to, basically, I'm raising my family in this business to try to keep it afloat and keep it going. So it was just wearing on me. So I was like 2014, I was like, all right, I'm going to try to buy him out. And he just wouldn't sell the business because he knew he was, the money's coming in. It's easy money. So I ended up just taking a payout and just walked away.
Fine. You buy out. You buy me out.
Yeah.
Got you. Okay. And so then obviously the market tanked and that business probably went under. And
yeah. I don't think he lasted.
But
like 8 or 9 months maybe.
Right. So you took that buyout on that. What was your plan? Did you have a plan at that point? Like, I'm gonna take that buyout and then I'm gonna go do this, or was it like, babe, we got to get out of this. I'm taking the buyout. We'll figure it out.
So that's when I started getting into, because I already had the channels open for liquidation. So I started doing home improvement. I rented my neighbor's garage and I got my first like truckload and just started that. And then at the same time,
you started home improvement. You weren't like being a contractor.
No, I was literally buying like from Home Depot. I was buying like truckloads of liquidation.
Okay, liquidation, returns, discontinued, overstock. Okay.
Yep. And so we're doing that out of my garage and then my neighbor's garage, like literally right next door. Yeah. And then at the same time, I met a lot of people in the recycling world and a few in other business. So then I started consulting at the same time.
Oh, in business,
space, yes.
In that space, in that particular niche, or were it just in business in general?
Just in business in general, just to kind of help them out. One was a recycling company out of, he was like in between Holland and Zealand there. He ended up getting bought out, but he wasn't turning a profit at all, and I felt really bad for the guy. And then there was a couple other companies that I went in and just, tried to give them some advice. I think sometimes it's good from a business perspective to get an outside
somebody
opinion.
Who's not, because you can, it's almost like you can fudge your own numbers. I say numbers metaphorically, but also including numbers. You can fudge your own numbers to yourself.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So that outside looking in is like, that's not what's happening. That's not what's happening. So yeah. So you were like kind of providing some insight and some input to some other guys.
Yep.
And some would heed your advice and things would go well, and some
did not.
Some did not, and it didn't go well. And this was just like, were you a reader? Were you studying podcasts, that kind of thing, or were you just like, this is what I've been through and this is what I struggled with, and like where did that knowledge come from? Just experiential, or were you digging into stuff?
So I was also just finishing up pretty close to getting my bachelor's degree in business finance.
I got you. Okay. So there was some nuts and bolts and book knowledge.
There was, and I love business and I love finance, and I already have, and I think I'll probably elaborate more on it, but like literally I spent from getting a felony and a misdemeanor in like being a thief, and now I'm going to college to literally do finance in business.
Right.
Everybody's like, you're an idiot. Nobody is going to hire you. So then my thing is
somebody to hire me.
If I'm my own business and I'm a consultant, I can do whatever I need. Yeah. And I can find other people. If they have the same issue, then I can hire them. That's not that big of a deal.
Exactly. Well, that's where I ended up. Same place in 2015. It was like, I can't sell insurance anymore. And so I ended up on the end of a shovel, but and that's at that point, that's all I could get. And then as time went on, things really took off when I started working for myself. And the more of us guys out there like that, the more opportunities there are for guys like us out there that, okay, you need a second chance, you need a third chance. We're on our fourth chance with some guys. And God has put us in unique situations, and we have helped quite a bit in some of those bad situations.
Absolutely.
And so, our prayer going through our biggest struggle, my wife and I, was, please don't waste this.
Yeah.
Use this in some way. And, that's part of this podcast, part of the bit, redeemed roofing and exteriors. It's not just, that's not just a good marketing ploy for redeeming your roof. It's, that's who we are.
Yeah.
That's when I first met Joel, we were building the office, and I went and bought it, and we'll talk about his business here in a minute, but I went and bought a bunch of stuff to furnish the office, and he saw the side of my truck, and he was like, "Hey, and so we started talking. I was like, "Hey, you too? Oh, great." So that was really cool. That's kind of how we met. But so you were able to, okay, so now you were into the kind of that liquidation space.
Yep.
And you were selling online, selling out of the house. What?
Both.
Okay.
Back then, Craigslist, which nobody really knows much about.
Right.
So if you're really young listening to this, you probably don't know too much about Craigslist.
Facebook Marketplace before Facebook.
Yes. Yes. So doing eBay.
For those of you who are much older, the classified ads after classifieds.
That's right.
So we get you in the middle there.
That's right.
So,
but yeah, that's what I used Amazon at the time, and I was just learning Amazon, which is a whole nother beast, and they were not as big as they are obviously now. eBay, which was probably the easier of the two, and then just doing my own on like Craigslist and people knowing who, when I started selling. But I got pulled away very quickly. One, I get distracted easily. I can't use ADHD or ADD as an excuse all the time. But Nick Wagonmaker, which is where we actually ended up starting Rescue 2.0, he was getting ready to buy his dad's greenhouse. At least he was preparing to buy it. And I think his dad needed some help. And I'm like, well, I can come over there, and instead of consulting, quote unquote, I was like, at that time, I was like, all this money's going out. There's no money coming in. I'm like, well, I can go work there. I told my wife, I was like, I'm not going to make a ton, but I was like, I get to work with Nick. I get to have fun. We're in a greenhouse. It's warm. It's, March, April. So I end up doing that, and then just kind of going through, and then, spotting what I see, letting Nick know, we're just coming up with these crazy ideas to help expand the greenhouse at that time.
Did you let go of the liquidation stuff then?
Nope, doing both.
Doing both.
Doing both.
Which your wife and kids loved.
Oh, absolutely. I do a lot at night, and that's what I did.
And when you're doing that kind of online situation and unpacking and all that kind of stuff, that's, that allows for that. You probably weren't doing a lot of that in a greenhouse. You were probably those kind
sweating.
of 7 to 3 in the greenhouse.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So you work in the greenhouse for a while. Did that business turn around, or?
He didn't buy it at that time. It didn't work out at that time frame. But then Nick Wagonmaker, it wasn't God's timing, right? So he ended up buying that and had a lot more financial stability in, I think, 2021.
Got you. So it kind of picked back up.
Yes.
Got you. People started buying their own food, growing their own food.
Yep.
I think that market kind of took off really hard right there at COVID. Because everybody was like, oh, no, eggs are $3 a dozen. I'm going to go grow chickens and, tomatoes. And so, I think a lot of people, we had been kind of half homesteading. We turned it up a notch when all that happened. So,
good.
So you helped out with that.
Yep.
And then
I get really pulled away because I start working for Jared Baxter. Called me. Good guy from church. He owns Get Her Cut out of Spring Lake. And he's like, hey, man, I lost the dude. He walked off, and he's like, I need a guy. He's like, I'm doing a lot of tree work, and I just need help. I need another hand right now. I was like, man, that sounds like a lot of work more than I want to do.
More than I want to do.
I was like, all right, let's do it. So day one, I joined him.
You left the greenhouse to go to this?
Yeah. So I ended up talking to Bruce because the season's almost done. I think it was probably end of April, beginning of May. And so most of the shipping for Bruce Wagonmaker was done. He did a lot of co-op shipping, big orders. And most of the shipping side gone. And I'm like, hey, hours are getting slow. And then Jared calls me at the right time. And I'm like, all right, I'll come.
Perfect.
I'll come work
this
for you.
Works great, Jared.
Yeah.
Okay.
So still kind of doing the liquidation. Now it's kind of turned to part-time. It's no longer a priority. Now I'm focused on Jared's business. So day one, we're taking a tree out in Spring Lake right by the water. And he's already cut most of it down. And by most of it, there's still 75, 85 foot stalk left. Okay.
It's a tree.
It's a tree. It's a massive white pine tree. And so we're right next to the water and we're getting ready to cut it. And he's getting ready to cut. I'm this new greenhorn on the job, not
just
sure.
hauling brush.
Yeah. So he cuts it and there was an issue because when he cut the tree, it bounced. So we thought the tree would just kind of land. Well, it bounced enough to the point where it picked up speed and started rolling towards the water and then going down. There was, what would you call it? I'm going to have to say edit. Just kidding. It would have to be, it's a bunch of railroad ties are built up to.
Or like a retaining wall.
A retaining wall. Thank you.
Yeah.
So literally it goes over the retaining wall and goes down another one and another one. And I don't know, these people had a lot of money.
Tree.
Yeah, this 80-foot tree is now rolling. And this couple, they have this like $5,000 or $6,000 heavy duty playset, which stops this tree dead in its tracks. So thank goodness for that. But it would have been in the water and now we would have had another issue.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that was day one. And I'm just like, I have to stay. We have to work safety.
Right.
That's number one. Why did this happen? The top wasn't tied down. We're coming up with all these different, because there's a rope at the top and we used the bobcat to kind of pull it over. We might have pulled it over too fast, which caused too much basically for it to bounce. I don't know the exact reason at that time, but I'm just like, all right, we have to work on safety. And that's where I ended up working for Get or Cut for almost a year, becoming his like director of operations, which is basically his right-hand man. And we ended up gaining the drain commission. His business doubled within a year.
Oh, wow.
And that's not just on me, but that's like literally like if I partnered up with you, it's like two heads like that are completely engaged in business. Makes it that much stronger because we're both every day thinking, how do we grow this business? How do we make better lives for ourselves? And how do we help people? So.
Yeah. Okay. So you're working tree industry for a year.
Yep.
And
then just while I was working for Jared, I ended up going to a lawyer and I ended up getting my felony expunged.
Nice.
Yes. So I ended up standing in front of the judge and, I just had my boy. So now we're 2015 and I'm standing in front of the judge. I get like 2 minutes to speak and that was it, and I'm just kind of like, I served in the military, I went to war. I did all these good things, I don't really have anything else on my record, besides speeding tickets from a crotch rocket that would go too fast. But other than that, I changed my life. And then the defense, he speaks, I don't even think he got 30 seconds in. And the judge's like, yeah, I've heard enough. I'm like, oh, crap. I'm like, here it comes. And he's like, Mr. Lamoreaux, I don't see any reason why I shouldn't expunge this. And gone. That quick.
That's it. It's over.
It's over.
2.5 minutes.
Yeah. I was in and out of there in under like
what's the name of that? What's the name of the judge? I want to make sure.
I don't even remember. I don't even remember my lawyer at the time, and I feel really bad. But yeah, it was not as bad. I mean, I paid maybe $2,500 to $5,000 to get the felony removed, but worth every penny for my own stupidity.
Sure, right.
So,
okay, but you're still working for the tree company.
I am, and now I have Cassie. She has a twin brother. And he works for Whirlpool, and he's like, dude, I can get you in, and you can,
because you didn't have the felony anymore.
Because I didn't have the felony anymore, so I ended up actually applying to go work for Whirlpool, and ended up doing about 2.5 years there in the financial world. So
okay, and then,
yep, I ended up getting an offer from Jared to actually come back to Muskegon. So my family and I we moved, we uprooted our whole entire family. We had a house in Muskegon Heights and ended up leaving, and then I had a buddy move into that while I was gone. And so we moved down to like the Coloma area, lived down there for like 2.5 years, and this is where the desert was for me. Like for me and my wife, there was just, we couldn't connect with the church. We went to lots of churches. We just couldn't, and I know why, right? Because we weren't supposed to be there, right? But we could not get involved with anything at all. Like it just like, we went to lots of churches that had these great shows. They had great preaching, but no community, and it sucks. And I was like, babe, like we're fighting, we're saying the D word more than we should be, right? and just everything isn't going good. And then Jared calls me up. He's like, hey, man, let's do this again.
Let's do this again.
And at that time, I was just kind of fed up. And I told Cassie, and Cassie's like, well, if he offers you the right salary, then yeah, we'll come back. And basically, my wife's the one that negotiated the contract. I mean, I didn't have to do anything.
This is what he's going to have to come back.
And
Can
Jared's
you
like,
do that? No, that's not going to work. You're going to need to come off more of that. Okay. Yeah, I'll let him know he can come back.
Yes. So like she did it. And so we ended up moving back, which is really a challenge in 2000. This would be 18 because the market has now changed, which I always thought, you ever watch, I think it's Property Brothers, and people are fighting over these houses and they're getting into bid wars. I'm like, these guys are idiots. I was like, we don't have that. And then I moved back up like to Muskegon area. We can't get our hands on a single flipping house. Every time that we walk into a house, like, oh, this house is already sold, or there's
There's 7 offers on this thing,
What?
and the deadline's tonight at 6.
Like, what is going on? Who is buying all these houses? Where did they get all this money? And some of these are like straight up cash offers. These are like $250,000 house cash offers. I'm like, where are all these rich people coming from? So we ended up finding one in Whitehall, which is where we're at now. And my wife to this day is probably not the happiest with me because it was smoked in for like 60, 70 years. But it's on like 10 acres. It had solar. It had a big barn. In fact, the barn, I think, is like a couple square foot bigger than the house, which I thought was man's law there.
That's right, yeah.
Yes,
There
you have
you
a
go.
barn bigger than your house.
There you go.
So we ended up rehabbing that, and that's just where we're at right now. So
Got you. Okay. And at what point were you like still continually doing the liquidation thing, or did that disappear for a while?
here and there, I did a couple things when I was down at Whirlpool. I just kind of do it at night. I filled my garage way too much, where my wife was parking outside the garage yet again.
Didn't she?
Oh, she does.
She
To
would
this day,
drive
she still parks
home.
up.
She would drive home and open the garage door and just look, and she would have all kinds of nice things to say about you.
Oh, awesome.
He's so wonderful. That's what she said, wasn't
Yes,
it? Yeah.
absolutely.
I mean, our wives do that. They just support everything we do.
Yes, everything, no matter they want to or not. Yeah,
That's right. So you're back working for Jared.
Yep.
And then Jared, we might have to get Jared on the podcast and get the real scoop on the other side of this thing. and so you work with him for a while, but when I met you, you were doing Rescued 2.0.
correct.
So where did that transition happen?
All right, so COVID hits 2020, and I already have a call a couple days prior that there's probably going to be a shutdown from the National Guard, right? And on that end, and they're going to probably start. So at that time, I was part of the 46 MP Command out of Lansing, Michigan, right? And so there's a National Guard unit, there's a reserve unit, and then there's an active duty unit that trains, which is called C2CRE, which of course, military loves acronyms, but it's like Command and Control Element Response. And what they do is they respond to like nuclear, biological, chemical, natural disasters. And apparently like biological is kind of like COVID. So we get activated the day Michigan gets shut down. We go down to Battle Creek and we start our operations. And within, I think it was about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we ended up getting activated all the way to active duty for this. So it's serious now. So we're not just National Guard. And a lot of other National Guard units got activated. They're still National Guard. We are not. We're no longer. We're active duty unit. And because we have a 2-star general. Because of that, we basically could put our command center anywhere. We chose Lansing. So we ended up putting our command center at the Henry B. Center in Lansing, which is a golf course. Because it's not being used at the time, right?
Well,
This is perfect, and we're putting nice hotels, and you have to have a hotel. You have to have a place to stay. So we're traveling, if you travel, you still have to have like residence somewhere. So they have like room and board and everything. So we're in a nice golf course place. We have really nice hotels, which is very weird for the military.
Hotel
right?
room service and all this.
Because we're always bunked up together all the time in the military, And so this is a very nice blessing. But I did this for 18 months. So we're traveling all over. Anything that involved, oh, by the way, I'm now the budget manager for this unit. So, I mean, that's for me at the time was huge, you know, from going from a felon all the way now.
You're budget manager in the military.
I'm the budget manager in the military for the 46 MP Command.
Wow.
After having a felony years ago, you know, so it's
but God, right?
This is it right there.
That's it. So you're 18 months in that, obviously not working for Jared at that time.
Correct.
So that was 2021.
2021. Yep.
So early to mid 2023.
Yep.
Or late 2022. They're like, okay, you're no longer on active duty.
Correct. So in the hotel, I'm already developing something. I'm watching all this waste happen. So I'm looking out my window, like garbages are just full. Everything is thrown away. Nothing is just kept. So I'm trying to develop a business that is going to do something. I didn't know what at the time, and ended up falling back into the liquidation. So the whole part of like Rescued 2.0, I mean, everybody's like, it sounds like you failed the first time. Yeah, maybe. I mean, I sold the first Rescued business, but I was like, I didn't really have another name for it at the time. It was just in my hotel room. It's what I filed for the LLC. And I was like, it doesn't really matter. But I ended up, the whole purpose of the business was basically to fix things what we possibly could in the liquidation world, because I knew a lot of people that got stuff, they just throw it away if it didn't meet the specifications, right? But we wanted to turn things into parts, which I'm a part guy through and through.
But you never did like car parts. You never parted out cars.
Well, so about a month or two before.
So you skipped something. Okay, so you skipped something. All right.
About a month or two before I come off, I was talking to my buddy who I was going to do like cars and motorcycle parts. And he was like, well, I just bought his like brother-in-law was actually getting out of the business of what he was doing, which is car parts. So now he bought a house. He's got a barn built. And now he's going to start tearing like all these cars apart and all these vehicles. And I'm like, crap. I don't want to be a competitor against him.
Right, sure. Okay.
So I shifted my focus.
Got you.
I'm like, well, I already have all the ins. So I literally went back to some of the same companies I already had ins with, and I opened up some of those.
So it was almost turnkey for you at that point.
Yes. So I had good relationships with a lot of people still.
Right. Got you. Because those relationships you built after you had already had the felony on your record.
Correct.
So it wasn't like a surprise to any of them, or if they did find out, they knew you long enough that it didn't matter.
Correct.
Got you. And that's, I think, kind of where I ended up at some point when we switched into roofing and that kind of thing is, yeah, you get to a point where, you know, God has protected your reputation to a certain point where, okay, if people do find out, you've already built the reputation, or it's not news to them when you start the relationship.
Correct.
So it doesn't hurt as bad. But still, there are limitations. In yours, with your record being expunged, that probably helps. But so there are limitations. But really, Rescued 2.0. Now, did you have that in mind, that connotation, that spiritual connotation of the word rescued, or was it not? Like that was part of it? Got you, that you had been rescued. Got it.
Rescued Parts, my first one, was all about that too. My business partner really didn't. I, kind of understand, but I was like, dude, it's about rescuing stuff, rescuing people, helping people. And that's what we did all the time. I mean, we didn't just stay local. We didn't, go global. I mean, we ship parts all over the world for TVs, but we helped a lot of the community people out too. They cracked their TV. They got nothing to do. They're about ready to throw it out. I'm like, no, we'll give you money. At least, don't end up. And we fixed a lot of TVs, local TVs too, by, the same thing. So,
right, exactly.
For much cheaper than, a lot of some of the other people, even though we don't have TV repairmen anymore.
What's the TV? We don't have anything repairmen anymore.
Not much.
Send it back to the factory or dump it in the trash can at this point. So do you see, when did Rescue 2.0 start?
Originally, I filed while I was still in the hotel, and then I came off orders. I went down to Fort Bliss to demo, and I came off orders like first or second week of October. And I was like...
Of 2020?
Of 2021, and then I was already going. So I talked with Nick, and this is the God thing, right? So I have an idea. I have a dream. I have a business plan on all the mirrors. My hotel mirrors were filled with all my business plan. And I talked with Nick, and he's like, well, I got space for it.
And Nick was the
Nick is the one that owns Wagon Maker Greenhouses, right?
The greenhouse guy.
Yep.
Okay. Yep.
So now he owns it, and it's like the son
Mm-hmm.
of Bruce.
And so he's I got space for you.
I got space for you. I got a dock here because I used to borrow his dad's dock back in the day to get
unload,
stuff in.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was like just an act of God that everything lined up. And so I move everything, get all the first truckload was just like lighting. And I'm like, it was the only thing I could get my hands on at that moment.
That was in 21.
Yes, this is in 21. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do with lighting. You know, this isn't my cup of tea, but I was like, we'll figure it out. And then I realized that, you know, lighting's a big deal. Lighting's a huge deal.
That's what brought me in. That's what brought me into your shop. I needed 2 lights for my office.
That's correct. It's one of the first things you do. A lot of average homeowners basically can, you know, replace their own lighting unless their spouse doesn't like them and they flip the switch in the middle of the process,
exactly. Right? That's never happened.
That's never, ever happened. But the lighting took off. And so Nick, he's also a realtor too. I mean, he's a pastor at Kingdom Life Church. He owns Wagon Maker Greenhouse. The dude wears multiple hats. And then he also is a realtor and just kind of helps people out. He doesn't seek it really, but like people like, hey, I'm looking at a house. He's like, well, I'm a realtor. I can help you.
Right, right.
And that's what he does.
Yeah, I don't know anybody else like that. Speaking of Forrest, who is taking care of the tech on this podcast, as many of you know, Forrest is just like that. Forrest got some real estate going on.
Good.
Am I allowed to say that? Am I allowed to say that
banker.
Forrest Lord is a realtor, and he's a darn good one too, but he's not chasing it down. So if you need something house-wise, you know, you just holler at Forrest because he'd take good care of you, but you probably won't see him on a billboard. Anyway, moving on. So Rescue 2.0, so you started in lighting, and then you started picking up more home improvement type stuff.
Yep.
And you were operating out of the greenhouse, doing most of your stuff online.
Yep. So I'm meeting people. So I'm doing Facebook Marketplace, running eBay, and then meeting people for all these items. And about a month and a half in, so I clean out all this area where like his dirt was at. It's like in we call it the shed, which is where basically he gets all the truckloads in. And it's not the greatest place for people to come and shop. And then he's like, I don't really want a lot of people coming in here. So then I'm like, all right, I have to go meet people. But he's a realtor. So then he's like, well, I just closed on this house, and I just closed on this house and this one. I've got people coming tonight if you can meet them at 6. I was like, yeah, anything. And so the first couple that comes, I don't even know, they spent like $400, $500, $600 the first time. And then I have another couple come. They spend like $500, $700. And then another one spends another $600, $700. I'm like, what is going on? I was like, okay, we can make this work. And we're selling some stuff on eBay. We're selling a few things on Marketplace here and there. And I'm running around meeting people. I was like, man, it would be nice if I could just like open something up. And he's like, well, why don't you use the big greenhouse right now? He's like, I don't need it till probably March. It's November.
What happens in March, though?
March is when he starts bringing all.
Well, but I'm saying, what? That's your question to him. What happens in March? Yeah. Where am I supposed to go? What do I do? Just stop? You know?
I led. He's like, we'll find a spot, and that's just
there
like that's God, right? So
right.
I'm literally walking. I have no idea where I'm going, and just being led. All the doors are opening at the absolute right time, which is crazy. And so now I'm in this massive greenhouse, clean it all up. You know, it's got tables. We make everything work. Now I'm getting more and more truckloads in. And now I'm getting all kinds of things from furniture to, you know, I call them fart fans, you know, ventilation fans. We're getting toilets, everything. And I have a couple that comes in there like, well, are you actually on groups, like Facebook groups, Muskegon Informed, all that stuff? Just a very nice couple. They're from here, but they reside, I think, down in Georgia or Alabama. And I was like, no, I have no idea. I just joined Facebook recently at that time. And I'm like, I've been off Facebook for a long time. I don't really know Facebook. I'm not a fan of Facebook. But I know that I need Facebook at this time to grow my business. There just wasn't a way. And so she starts hooking me up. She's like, all right, let's. So this is what you need to do. And this, she starts explaining. Then she makes a story. So she posts a story about how I helped her and her husband. That blew up.
Went viral.
It went viral, and then I'm like, all right, so now I can use Muskegon Informed. And then that's when it started. I really started gaining ground.
And then you started working with, like, hooking up with, like, realtors and stuff like that, mortgage folks and whatnot, growing that side of the business. So they're like, hey, you just bought a house. You need to go see this guy.
Yep.
Got you. And so now at some point, you got a location.
Yep.
So was that March? Was that when you had to?
So I ended up picking up his right-hand man at the time, which was David, who now works for me, who's basically my right-hand man. And we're looking across the way, and I'm like, what are you doing with those greenhouses? Those, there's like one across the way, and he's like, nothing. As right now, he's like, I want to expand into it. I'm like, can I just blow a door, into the side of this greenhouse? And then like, can we make that work? And that's what we did. And we moved over in like probably 5-6 days and basically had our store back up and running very quickly over the weekend.
Okay.
So now we're in 2 hoop houses that are, one is 30 by like 100 and one's 30 by 125. And that's pretty big.
That's a lot of stuff.
So we're building special shelving and all this stuff to kind of work with the curvature.
Right.
And I know I knew the products, the biggest isse with this business of running it in a greenhouse is the fact I have to protect everything, right? Everything is in boxes and everything starts to like sort of sun fade.
Humidity and sun fade. Yep. And
the humidity wasn't as big of an issue except in winter. Believe it or not.
Sure, because it warms up and any moisture in the air. Yeah, okay.
So you'll see like even on some of the boxes I have at the new building, there'll be like little water droplets on the box.
That's what it looks like. That's what we got. But you open the stuff up and it's brand new, you know?
It's brand new. I mean, if there's ever any issues, I always tell people, just let me know. You have 2 months, anything back, So that we basically move in there, and this is where we really start to gain a lot of ground. I mean, it's a greenhouse. It's dirty.
It was profitable pretty quickly for you. You didn't invest in growth until the money was there from the existing business to grow. It wasn't like, if we want to grow this business, we have to expand. It was, hey, we have to expand because this business has grown. I see. Which is a really cool spot to be, because I think a lot of guys find themselves in the opposite position. It's like, we can't grow unless we expand. We can't grow unless we invest in this thing. And I think at times God brings us to a place where it's like, no, we have grown, so we have to expand. We are generating more business than we have the infrastructure to support. And so that's really awesome to see when God does that. Do you think, coming from a financial perspective and having that financial background, well, let me back up just a little bit. So you're in this greenhouse and still continue to grow, but you're dealing with sun fade issues, stuff like that. So then this building pops up for sale.
Yeah. Most recently, the one where we're at now. So Nick, we already have it laid on my heart that it was, beginning of last year. In 23, we're like, all right, we need to find a building. We're getting too big for, Nick's property. And great. I mean, his family's amazing. Like, even Abby, his wife, would literally come in and make food for us once in a while. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, why would I ever want to move?
Right.
Like, literally, this is amazing.
But you're running a resale store out of a greenhouse.
I'm running,
that's it.
At the back of, like, literally where Sam's Club is at. You have to work your way all the way in the back of this like little tiny community, and then you find our business, which is really hard to see. I got like a little tiny road sign by US 31, but not a lot of people know us, right? And which I was hoping by us getting business there, it also helped wagon makers grow as well too.
Right, exactly.
So now they know where he's at, and they see how good, like, what he can grow and his
so
prices.
That helps.
It does, yeah. It's mutual beneficial there.
But you had to have another spot.
I did, yeah. So all spring and summer, we're just kind of looking at buildings. Everything is falling through. Everybody wants. It was probably on average $10 a square foot.
For commercial space.
Yeah, per year. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is way too much for a liquidation business. We're not.
This is not a high margin business.
Yeah.
We gotta have the volume.
Our business isn't. We make good profit, but we don't actually get to keep a lot of that profit. Everything gets reinvested. I say, like, when I'm cash heavy, it's going into my next truckload. So we're cash poor a lot of the times, like literally very poor.
It's cash flow. Right.
Yeah, because I have to buy inventory. If I don't have inventory, I don't make any money.
And your inventory doesn't turn around quickly. So
not all.
You have a lot of inventory sitting on the floor.
I'm buying overstocks. I'm buying, things that they could have issues. I have a lot of products that are just sitting there waiting for parts. I have to order stuff. I have bought multiple truckloads where I just lose my butt. I buy $80,000 worth of kitchen and bath, and, I halves everything. So, that in my eyes, that's $40,000.
Mm-hmm.
And then I start opening the truck and I start getting them off, all the product off. And then, half the vanities are cracked.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so there's $20,000.
Right.
And now I'm trying to recoup, right? So now I have vanities without tops, and I'm lucky that I have amazing customers that come in and they will still buy vanities, and they're like, "Oh, we'll find a top, or we'll make our own." I'm like, "Well, that's great. Now you have something custom that nobody else has."
Right, exactly, right.
Because the vanity is really the hard, that's hard to build. Nobody wants to build the vanity part.
The countertop you can, sink top, you can, whatever.
You can put that on there. So pushing forward, it was like, I think it was middle of summer is when Nick goes, I'm actually buying, there's a father-son team, and he's buying succulents. Mm-hmm. They're getting ready to get out of the succulent business, so he's buying the succulent business. Mm. And so he buys over 100,000 succulents. Mm-hmm. And I was like, bro, is this kind of like a little hint of like, it might be time for me to go? And he's like, no, I'm never going to kick you out. He said, it might be uncomfortable for us, to be here, but we're going to make it work, basically, in that aspect. And I was like, but even in the spring, like God was like laying on my heart, like, hey, fall, we're going to find something. Well, it's like October, and I'm like, God, where is this building?
You said fall.
Where?
You said fall. Here it is.
And I'm looking, and we've looked at a few buildings recently, and then the next thing we see is this building that one of my customers shops that actually is on the other side of the building. And he's like, hey, I got this building, come check it out. And so we look at it, which is where we're at now, the 3530 Airline, which is the old O'Leary's paint building. This building's 15,000 square feet. The other side, cabinet headquarters, has like 5,000 something. So we have about 66% of the building. Mm-hmm. It's got a dock. It's got a pony dock. It's got a pain in the butt dock, which is blind backing, which is no truck driver likes, but we can make it work. Mm-hmm. We have solid floors. We have central air. I mean, these are all things I'm like, this is
right.
We have a bathroom attached. We don't have to walk outside.
You didn't have it's not the greenhouse. It's not a greenhouse.
It's not.
It's a place for a resale shop.
Yeah. I was like, the building needs some work. It's not perfect, but I was like, we can make this work. Mm-hmm. And we go in there. Nick helps me negotiate, and we end up getting the square footage we want with the shared space, and I felt like we're kind of being a little mean, and that's not what I want to do ever with anybody.
Right.
But at the same time, I need that square footage.
Wise as a serpent and harmless as a dove, right?
Yes.
So you needed the square footage, and that ended up working out well. So you got a sweet spot now. You're on a high visibility situation. So I do want to jump back on two questions I had, because amazing story. I love it. I think, one of my favorites, I think the other one I enjoyed was Cyril, when we had Cyril on the podcast. Just that story of like God moving, and you can see God moving in every step of the way, taking care of your family, and then, financial good times to prepare you for things where things were a little tighter. Maybe just one thing. From a financial standpoint, I mentioned where you expand the business because the business has grown, or you invest in the business in hopes that it will grow. What do you think are some determining factors on, how did you decide when it was time to expand the business? Was it always, when you expanded business, was it always that it was the business forced you to expand rather than you were trying to force the business to expand?
All right, so we have to go back to the hotel, and then I can kind of explain a little bit more.
Sure, yeah.
So I was basically building and trading cryptocurrency while I was in the hotel.
Okay.
At the same time. So I'm building a cash cow, basically, and just before I come off of COVID orders, I cash it all in, which was positively the absolute best time to get out of cryptocurrency at the time before it dropped.
Right.
Okay. So I'm walking away with a nice nest egg where I can use that money to invest. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I come off orders, and to basically like, what's the best time is I took that investment and I invested all of it into starting this company. Right. So I use that, and then I'm also getting paid by the military yet. So, and then I have healthcare coverage for the next year. Right. So all these things are set up. So this means I can snowball as much money as possible in the beginning. All my profits, and I know this is not right for everybody, but I was like, if you ever have this opportunity, I used all those profits instead of like taking a paycheck early on. I waited 4, maybe 5 months to take a paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very, very small. Nick was the one pushing me to take a paycheck.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you got to take a paycheck. I'm like, we still have money in the bank. I think we're okay.
Right.
Because the more money I can keep in the business, the faster I can snowball.
Well, especially when you're a buy-sell business.
Yes.
For us, and we got labor to put in, et cetera. And we're kind of in a position because of subcontracting when we're a buy-sell business. So but I can't go buy materials and pay for labor if I haven't sold the roof yet.
Correct.
You buy it and put it in there so that it can sell.
Correct.
Mine's the opposite, and a lot of guys are in the opposite position. But from a retail type of situation, you can invest because ultimately that money is still there. It's sitting on your floor.
Yes.
You haven't necessarily lost it most of the time.
Yes.
This is at that cracked vanity top or whatever. But so you walked into it in a situation where God had kind of set you up
very well
ahead of time, so that if things did get a little tight, you didn't quite clear the inventory you expected on that $80,000 truckload, and there was still $25,000 of inventory sitting on your floor not sold yet.
Yep.
It was okay because you weren't needing that $25,000 to pay your bill.
Correct.
Got it.
So on active duty, like, I got paid very well. And I'm like, a lot of people are like, military doesn't get paid good. And I'm like, we get paid pretty decent, not
Right.
in the beginning, right? When you go to
right.
Iraq and you're making 20-some thousand getting shot at a year, that's not really good.
Yeah.
But I was like, I've been in, like, at that time, 18 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm getting a nice paycheck. We're getting per diem. We're staying in hotels.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting travel, all this stuff. And so my wife and I, over that 18 months, we're paying off debt. We're getting,
dude.
And so
you have no living expenses.
Yeah. So we're really strong coming out of like COVID. Like, we're stronger than ever.
Right.
Just financially. So it's like, all right, it is time to start the business, right? And so using everything we had, we put into that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Got you. So yours has been even back in the tree business and the greenhouse business and the original rescued parts. Did you ever see a time where you were investing in the business to make it grow, as opposed to what you did most recently in the business growing, so you had to business growing, which forced you to expand?
I'm always investing.
Sure, right. But as it like a general principle, so I buy a building so I can buy more stuff, so I can get more customers in the door, versus I have too many customers coming in the door for this building, so I need to go buy a building. Do you get what I'm saying? Do you get the difference I'm talking about?
I needed a bigger building so I can get more customers in, for the most part, because I'm in a location where I can't showcase all my products.
Got you.
I have a lot sitting on the dock.
So there was a sense that you were investing in order to grow the business.
Correct.
You weren't at a point like where you were bursting at the seams with everything that you need, including product and people purchasing. You weren't bursting at the seams in both. You were bursting at the seams in product, and you could have relieved that pressure by getting more purchasers. So you did end up investing to grow the business, as opposed to the business forcing you to invest because it had grown.
Yeah, because even in June of 23, it was like a desert with business. Like, everybody went on vacation, and not many people were redoing their house. Like, you can watch the second to third quarter. It wasn't very strong for a lot of businesses. And so ours, like, we only survived because we had a lot of good contractors around, but there wasn't a lot of average homeowners just coming in and saying, hey, or they'd come visit, but they wouldn't buy much at that time.
Don't need a new sink. Don't need it
So for us to go after a building, and we're not at that time, I'm like, are we dumb? Are we not dumb? But we also just got hit with a flood. If you remember how bad the rainstorms were, those all went after the greenhouse. So, I mean, we have all of our stuff on pallets, right? But I know at this time, I'm like, we have to up our game, because I'm running a home improvement business out of a greenhouse. And I love Nick Wagon Maker. He gives an amazing opportunity for me for a great start. But I need a solid ground. I need solid ground, not only for our products, but also for our customers. I mean, we literally have this little strip of ground that's concrete in these greenhouses.
Run a pallet jack on a dirt floor.
Can't. We have people tripping over all the time. I'm surprised. Like
Mhm.
we had so many people tripping all the time, and people were just gracious enough to find us that like
Mhm.
literally were accepting of
Mhm.
us where we were at that time,
Mhm.
which is awesome.
Mhm.
So but yeah,
Right.
it was just time to get into a building.
You needed to grow
Yep.
in order to grow
Yes.
instead of growing because you grew.
Yes.
I see. I see. I wonder, it almost seems like you can't really control that situation. Like, okay, are we going to wait until we're bursting at the seams to grow? Because I think it depends on the business and the situation. I could easily say, well, I need an office to generate more customers, but I can't force it to be a situation where I have so many customers that I need an office. But I think you could have been in a place where you had too many customers and too much product for that space. I
Mhm.
can't fit 60 customers an hour into this space. I need a space, and I have 60 customers an hour standing at the door waiting to get in. Well, then you have to, but I don't think you can necessarily control. I mean, you can have influence on that, but I don't think you can necessarily control it. I mean, we plant and water and feed, and God provides the growth, right?
Yep.
And I think, as much as that particular text wasn't necessarily speaking to this concept, I think it can be applied there. And yeah, where we can make a nice space and treat people well and be safe and careful with our money and provide good product and good service that people, provide products, goods, and services that people need, want, and can afford.
Yep.
And then leave the rest up to God.
Yep.
And I think, the last episode we had on with the Vishers, just that concept of, look, we want our business to be where God wants it to be. And if God, if God wants us to move into a bigger building, then he's going to have 60 people lined up at the door because they can't fit in our existing building.
Yeah.
And I think that might be a good takeaway from me of, it's not necessarily a bad investment to invest to grow your business, but I need to be aware that growth, that expansion in business and investment in business can come from a need in, and I think that's what I was trying to drill down and us to figure out for someone to say, boy, if I invest this money, is it going to grow? Well, it can, and God may be leading you to do that, but there's nothing wrong with waiting until God does that, so long as you're still maintaining a profit. There's nothing wrong with waiting until God to throw you into a situation of got military pay and no living expenses, so he saved up a bunch of money and paid off debt, right? Being a
Yep.
good steward of what we had. How much of a role did good stewardship of what you had play into your success going into that first, restarting into that? So your stewardship of your resources in while you were on active duty, staying in hotels, etc. How much of an impact did that have on your success as the business is now?
Huge, because if my wife and I, if we didn't have any money, a lot of money, we would both like shut down. We do very well together as a team. So like if we need to spend money, like, and we're both on the same page, we're going to do it. I think that having those same mindset of we're going to spend a bunch of money to start this business, are you on board? And my wife was, and then let's do this. Let's try to create a business. We're going to invest a bunch of this money. And, and in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to be doing it. So I'm going to make it successful because I'm going to work my butt off. I'm going to do everything it takes. I'm going to take care of people.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that, that was like my mindset and everything I did do, that if I'm going to put money behind it, my whole entire, like, I'm behind it as well.
Right.
So
money is one of the resources, but that
Yep.
money is going, but that resource is going to drag the rest of my resources in with it. My
Yes.
time, my skills, my abilities, right?
Yep.
Got you. And so stewarding those resources ahead of time to be able to have that, that's huge. Before we got started, we kind of talked about, kind of the people that we're talking to right now. And we always do this kind of at the end of the show. Give me one or two just nuggets that we can walk away from. Great story, awesome to see God work in your life. I think that charges all of us who love Jesus, is to just watch him work in somebody's life and see, yes, God is still working, he's still moving, he's still directing and guiding if you're open to his prompting. So that's awesome. But talk to the people, so that we can walk away with this with some nuggets to go with. You talk to the guy who he's been a Christian. He's new to the business world. He's just stepping out. He's invested some money, some time. Talk to him. Give him a little nugget to take away, to walk away with. What advice would you give him?
I think if you're getting a vision, which is what I was getting, which is why I was building a business plan on a mirror, so I could physically see it. It wasn't a business plan that you would normally see written out. It was all nice and sexy. It was literally on a mirror that I could see every day. And that vision that I kept getting from God was like literally like, you could see it throughout, like up until like right even today. It's like, hey, when I was supposed to move into a business, move to our new location, like I had that vision months and months ahead of time. I didn't know where it was. I was like, all right, God, I got you. And then like October, I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure, God?
I had you.
I had you. And look, and like literally November, boom. It's still fall.
There it was.
That's still fall. I just, was impatient.
Yep.
So I was like, sometimes you need to be patient. If you have a vision from God, like, act on it and then start pursuing it. And it may not be right away. It could be farther along. We just start, prepping yourself. So there's even to this day, I was like, when we moved way too much stuff. And if I was smart enough, I should have had way less inventory when I moved.
I got you. Let it sell down a little bit.
Yes. And so I would say, way too much inventory. I should have moved way less inventory. I could have probably been up and running much faster.
It was just moving stuff.
Yes. And if your vision, believe it or not, I made a post, and only because my wife pushed me. I wouldn't have made this post if I didn't, because I was like, all right, I got to move this entire business. I got like 3-4 people. My wife's going to help. A couple people, wanted to volunteer. She's like, just put it on Facebook. See if anyone wants to help. I'm like, girl, ain't nobody want to come over and help me. Like I was
Work
like,
for free, do business, right?
I was like, I like helping people. It's my job to help them, They don't need to help me. And then lo and behold, man, we had a bunch of people show up. From all over, friends, family, to
previous
people
customers.
All the time, like they spent a couple hours. One spent a day with me. A few people had a truck show up.
Wow!
So I was like, oh my gosh, okay, God's working.
That's
we're supposed to be
right.
Moving,
That's where it's supposed to be a confirmation.
Everything is going right.
Confirmation.
Yep.
So receive God's vision. Take the action that you're able to, and be patient while He works out the details.
Correct.
Awesome. Well, we do. It's been great. I love your story. That's been awesome. It's been good to meet you. We'll get the link. You got a website and stuff for the store.
Yep.
We'll get that posted in the comment section. You're down on Airline Road, right there, kind of on the south end of Muskegon.
Yep.
And so check it out. Rescued 2.0. But like I said, we'll have a link in the description. And Joel, we just thank you for sharing your story, and hope it's a blessing to some other folks. Your podcast platform that you're listening on, it has some kind of subscribe or follow or sign up or whatever a button. Go ahead and do that, and that's going to increase our rankings and offer this to more people, because I think there's people out there that would really be blessed by Joel's story. And share this on your Facebook page, whatever. But keep listening. Thanks for listening, and have a good one.